All right, welcome everybody. This is the Market Hangout After Space. Really just kind of wanted to go through and highlight a couple things that I was specifically looking at for this week. So obviously last week we ended up going through and retesting the purple band here, and we also went through and put in our weekly low, being at $90,700. So, with where things currently stand, we have two areas that I think would be important to go through and kind of monitor for this week if we end up seeing kind of a continued drawback. First one would obviously be the purple band that we currently have sitting here. That would be currently at 93,889. So just shy of $9,400. After that, it would obviously be last week's low. With that being said, we do also have kind of this area that we went through and established with our new all-time high that we went through and put in. So my overall expectation, we either see kind of a continuation of the trend where if anything we come back through, we retest the purple band, maybe come back and see if we can go through and kind of get above this level. If we end up kind of failing to essentially a swing failure of this level, then at that point in time, I think it would probably be extremely likely that maybe we come back through, retest the purple band one more time, or potentially go through and fall back and test kind of last week's overall low, maybe deviate from there, and then probably try and maybe make another run back towards the highs. This would just kind of be my overall expectation as far as, my hope would be that we don't just go through and just continuously blast off towards, the upside. Again, I think that would potentially lead to scenarios where we could potentially be overheated too fast, and that would not be good for the longevity of 2025. But I think if we can spend kind of the rest of December kind of consolidating, building out price structure, that doesn't mean that we can't go through and potentially, tag and or maybe get above $100,000. But my overall hope would be that, we kind of see this period where we go through and just kind of consolidate. We cool off for a little bit, let some of these metrics that we'd go through and follow to see if the market ends up being heated or not, kind of go through and just have a gradual reset before kind of going through and moving higher from there. Again, just kind of keep in mind that it really has essentially been kind of up only since this low that we went through and put in August, and it's just been one massive rally. Yes, we've seen some short periods of overall kind of a cool off phase and everything, but all in all, it has not been anything super crazy. But with that being said, again, my hope would be that we spend some time going through and consolidating for a little bit. At least in my hope would be kind of the majority of December. But again, seasonality, it could mean that we end up just going through and just kind of blasting off. So what would be some overall setups that we might be able to go through and kind of follow to look to see, hey, are we looking like we are kind of going through and starting to break out? So anyone that has, kind of gone through and, followed me on any of the ways I like to go through and trade, I do like to trade kind of confirmations of different things. So one, if we ended up kind of getting kind of a continuation for long setups, these would be strictly long setups because I'm not looking to short the market right now. I don't think, both on the economic side of the coin slash everything that we're looking at seasonality with Bitcoin, that shorts would really kind of be high probability plays. So one of the things I think that would be a really nice clean setup would be exactly what we just talked about. Maybe a sweep of last week's lows. Now, if we go through and we see something like that, this would be a really nice, clean deviation style play. Excuse me. After this, we could go through, we could scale into a long. I think it would be really simple to go through and just kind of target the highs. This essentially would be almost a $10,000 move. Maybe take a little bit of profits around the halfway point, the midpoint here, being close to around $95,000, essentially close to around the level that we're sitting at here. Essentially this nice little clean consolidation zone that we went through and kind of formed. Let me go through and actually zoom in just to highlight that a little bit cleaner, just for anyone that wants that reference. So essentially, this nice little order block that we went through and formed. So right around $95,000, this would be a really nice clean area to go through and use kind of as a take profit level, and maybe as a level to go through and kind of move stops to break even. But this essentially, this would be target one, target two, and then see what all happens. Maybe leave a little bit kind of, in the trade if we ended up seeing kind of a continuation of a breakout. But we'll go ahead and kind of walk through what that would potentially go through and look like for Bitcoin here specifically as well. So, okay, talking breakout plays. This would be where here specifically, one, we're obviously beginning to build and have consolidation below the high that we went through and put in. This in and of itself sets up for higher probabilities of when a breakout play goes through and takes place, that it's more likely to go through and hold. Now, if we just, went through and we ripped up to a zone and everything, and we were faced with resistance, and we didn't have any kind of period of consolidation or anything, at that point in time, this would be where shorts are essentially the higher play, where we would have to come down, we'd have to revisit lower price structure, and then come back out, consolidate, test, and then get back above and start moving on higher. If speed essentially is one of those pieces of the equation that I think is just not talked about enough, and that would really be where, hey, speed, we came up, we tagged this level, we couldn't confidently get above, and we didn't have this period where we started building out some price structure. This would be where I would be very, very cautious for looking for breakouts and everything. But again, if we can go through, we build out some market structure here, and then at that point in time, we start seeing a move, we start seeing price gain acceptance above here. At that point in time, we would see an initial price tag that goes through and kind of gets put in. Now, my hope would be that we would see kind of a back test of this current range that we're going through and beginning to kind of play in, that we're going through and beginning to build out structure. At that point in time, I would watch these highs, because if these lows end up going through and holding, if we can go through and confidently hold the upper bound of the range, this would be where you could potentially go through and begin scaling in to shorts just a little bit, or I'm sorry, not shorts, longs at that point in time for a breakout play. Now, once we'd go through and overcome this level, this would be where I would scale the rest of my longs into the trade in anticipation, looking out for new highs. Now, what would some of those levels go through and look like? Now, purely just based off of the structure that we've gone through and built, one thing we can do is just use our fib tool, come over to these lows that essentially we went through and we put in, and come back up here and tag the highs that we went through and established, and suddenly we have some targets that we can go through and start looking at. So one of them happens to be $111,000 and 470. Yeah, $111,470. Man, that is crazy. Coincidentally, that is actually very, very close to where the fib MA is at on the weekly time frame with the long settings as well. So definitely would be a very, very significant area to go through and keep an eye on. Now, as always, I think it would be smart to go through and break some of these levels down just maybe a little bit more, just kind of given where things currently stand. Because again, we could potentially kind of come into around the midpoint of this point before tagging here, and who knows, maybe that be where, we kind of back test a little bit further, and then maybe you can essentially rinse and repeat and do the exact same trade all over again. But hey, if you took some profits at the midway point and you had stops to break even, yeah, you would have gotten stopped out, but the trade would have been profitable, and you can then go through and potentially do the trade all over again, which is really, I mean, it's a really good setup to go through and see something like that. So anyhow, yes, I would try and go through and maybe break some of these levels down just a little bit more. Look for the midpoint here, which would be just let me see. Did I do that right? No. Oh, that's, yeah, man. Okay, I was like, that doesn't look right. Okay, there we go. There we go. So yeah, the midpoint on this would be right around 105. And, I think that that would be an extremely attractive area to go through and take a little bit of profits on something like this, and then kind of go through and see what all happens from there. Now, again, if we're going back through and not just talking short-term plays, let me actually clean this up. This got messy. Okay, so now we're gonna go through and talk just a little bit more on some of the long-term plays here specifically. So we will switch this over into the long-term setting, swap over to the weekly time frame. Here we go. Hey, there's my frog. Okay, so coincidentally, just like I was just talking about, yellow band weekly Fib MA sitting at $111,000. Now, obviously, if we end up going through and seeing this, go through and take place next week, this will go through and continue to move higher week after week after week, as it is a moving average tied to the Fibonacci sequence. Again, so this would essentially be a moving target. Now, I know I've said this before, but so far, as things currently are standing, there's about a 30% probability in my mind that the yellow band ends up kind of being the peak for this cycle. Now, again, I think that we can and will go higher than that. I think that it's probably closer to around a 50% chance that the orange band ends up being close to around the peak, essentially the peak area for the most part. That means, we could end up potentially coming a little bit shy. We could end up potentially going through and overshooting it. But my overall expectation is that currently we got about a 50% probability that the orange band would probably be essentially the peak for this cycle. Now, the orange band currently is sitting at 185, 163. So absolutely massive. Would love to see price targets like that go through and actually take place. But again, short-term trades versus long-term trades, and trying to go through and find where the best areas are to go through and just kind of de-risk. Now, again, I know I've said this before specifically, but why the orange band? Well, it's because we're looking and we're expecting diminishing returns. We saw a extension about 2.5 above during the 2000 cycle. We saw about a half extension above the purple band during the 2017 cycle, and we saw about a third of an extension above the red band for the 2021 cycle. And so then that kind of brings us to here. So looking at this diminishing factor, essentially a little over 2, just about a half, and then to about a third of the red. So this would be where I think the orange band again would be the probable likelihood for a peak for this cycle. After this, we'll go ahead and just kind of briefly pull up Ethereum. Let me make sure I pull up the right chart. Yeah, okay, here we go. Once it decides it wants to load. Ah, that's right. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, so if we go through and we just hide the drawings here for just a little bit. Ethereum, why do I think $10,000 is a probable likelihood for this cycle? Well, one, this would be figuring pretty significant diminishing returns for Ethereum. First and foremost, Bitcoin, when it went through during 2013, extended above the purple band about a factor of about 2.5. For Ethereum here specifically, we were actually looking at almost a 5 times extension from the purple band. So very, very, very significant. After this, we went through and saw the peak, essentially the very first significant peak when all the metrics were saying, hey, things were very, very heated. Now, obviously, dollar-wise, we ended up going through and putting in a slightly higher high towards, December of 2021. But this very, very first peak being the more significant peak for Ethereum, all the metrics were saying, hey, this is critical. Things are heated. This is the one where we did go through and put about a half of an extension above the purple band. So with that being said, again, figuring kind of diminishing returns for Ethereum, this kind of, in my mind, almost eliminates the red band from kind of almost entering into the equation. Now, I'm not going to say that it's completely impossible. I think that there's probably about a 10% chance that we could see something like that go through and happen. But this would mean Ethereum would boom and boom bigly. So I think what is more likely is that, similar to Bitcoin, we would probably see it go through and come into contact with the orange band, and that would probably mark a very significant time that we would really kind of need to buckle down and pay attention to what all is going on. Right now, with where the orange band currently sits, it is just shy of $10,000. Now, obviously, again, this is the FibMA. This goes through and oscillates and grows and matures over time. So by the time we could go through and hit that, the orange band could potentially be closer to 12,000. It could be closer to 14,000. We'll really just kind of have to wait and see. But it's definitely going to be, in my mind, a very, very significant area if we can go through and make it there. I think it's similar probabilities to what I was just mentioning with Bitcoin, reaching the orange band being closer to around 50%. Now, obviously, if we go through and we confidently break above the yellow band, it might not be a bad idea to go through and begin kind of scaling out a little bit of some of those positions, making sure that, when it comes to, any position that you might have, that you get as close to risk-free as possible while still leaving room for significant upside. So anyhow, after this, again, the broader altcoin market. So looking at total 3 divided by Bitcoin, again, very, very significant move here. Let me actually bring the drawings back, and we'll go ahead and hide the FibMA. So just looking at this structurally. So structurally, starting this week off, very, very strong. Last week did go through. We did see a close above the descending channel, and we saw essentially it go through and close at this very significant just structural level, which is where we ended up finding our low back in June of 2023. But so far, I want to see this weekly close above. I want to see this be essentially the confirmation candle that we have broken out of this trend. Now, again, if we end up going through and we see a significant sell-off and this ends up just coming back down through into essentially the descending channel, then again, this is why we're talking about, we got to wait for the end of the week. There'd be nothing more than a deviation then at that point in time. And I think that the increase in probabilities of us probably coming back down and retesting maybe the midpoint of the descending channel and then blasting off, in that instance here specifically, figure this as almost forming a macro higher low, which again, that would kind of show signs of essentially the next big shift to go through and take place. Give me one of these two things. Give me either this candle confidently closing on top of this, or if we end up seeing the deviation go through and take place, I want to see the midpoint go through and confidently hold. If we end up going through and even getting down that far, that's all remained to be seen. We don't 100% know. Others divided by Bitcoin, very, very similar, setting up very, very nicely as well. Compared to total 3 divided by Bitcoin, we did not see the weekly close actually on top of the descending channel, but we are seeing this week go through and really begin to try to make that happen. So others divided by Bitcoin, we would probably need another week if this one can go through and confidently close above here, another week to go through and kind of confirm that we are in fact holding and kind of moving on from here. We're seeing and witnessing the trend shift in real time. Again, this is where the confirmation comes in. This is where, at that point in time, if you did not accumulate during some of these lows, this essentially would be kind of the candle to say, okay, this is your last chance. But that's not to try to incite, kind of FOMO. I think that, any cash that you'd be willing to kind of put into the market, it would need to be something that you'd be willing to have it go to zero. But overall, I do think that the probabilities here of the broader altcoin market just setting up for just such a very nice bullish scenario, I think are absolutely tremendous here. Outside of that, I know that I don't really talk about the DXY too much in here, but I do think that, kind of for the early parts of 2025, the DXY is probably going to go through and do pretty well. My anticipation would be that it probably makes a move towards 110, and then we'll have to kind of wait and see what all happens from there. I do think that, we're in this uptrend that we've been in. it would make sense to see a little bit of kind of consolidation. Maybe we see a little bit more of a pullback, but I don't think we see acceptance below 105 for the DXY. I think we see pretty quickly a re-challenge of basically this 107 level, and then go through and try to flip that into support and then move on from there. Outside of that, just to kind of recap really, really quickly, PAL looking great, looking strong. Both back above, whoops, both back above, oh, come on. There we go, there we go. Back above the descending channel, seeing pretty much a very, very nice confident back test and a whole bunch of buyers coming back into the market right around 10 cents and slightly below, and then since has blasted back off. So far, it's looking like we're wanting to challenge essentially around this 25 to 30 cent range. If we can go through and confidently hold that, I think it's only a matter of time before PAL goes through and re-challenges its current all-time high and then beyond. I said a long time ago, my overall cycle long target for PAL is roughly between $3 to $9. I think that it can very, very easily go through and make that happen. And approximately from current valuations, that would essentially be about a 10x to about a 30x in PAL. So very, very nice, very, very clean. Another one that I think is starting to go through and wake up and show officially signs of decent strength would be XAI. So we went through, we entered into this nice long period of consolidation here at the lows, and have since gone through and began going through and breaking this downtrend that we've seen. Now, again, I think that for XAI, once we go through and we kind of clear back above 45 cents, I think the accumulation zone for XAI would probably be done. It'd probably be over, because I think from there it very quickly goes back towards the highs between $1.20 to its current cycle highs of about $1.60. And then from there, I think, overall targets for XAI, I think extremely likely, similar to PAL, but this one probably a little bit more broad because the market cap is, I believe, just a little bit under. But I do think that between $3 to $12 would be extremely likely for XAI to go through and happen. Link obviously finally decided to wake up this past week and go through and really explode towards the upside, coming into kind of this overall order block that we see over here, facing resistance between $25 to $27. But outside of that, I think that once we go through and we clear this, short term, we might see a little bit more of a pullback, maybe kind of retest the highs that we ended up establishing back over here around $22. But overall, my expectation would be that once Link decides, yeah, hey, it's going to go through and start moving, it's probably going to go through and overtake these levels and then very confidently break into new all-time high territory. Link, at this point in time, I think it's possible we see, it take out kind of essentially that $50 range and probably go towards anywhere between $100 to $200. I think that would be pretty realistic targets for Link and probably a really good area, a really good zone to kind of de-risk in that. There's many other ones as well that I think are starting to show signs that are, really kind of waking up and really showing signs of strength. OP is one of them. Let me see. I think Jupiter was actually doing pretty well as well. And then, yeah, PYR as well. Actually, yeah, this was one that we had talked about, a long setup. You can actually see all my scribbles through here. So we've technically hit the first target for PYR. And, now it's back to go through and see if we can go through and challenge these highs that we established back over here. But overall, for PYR, I think it's extremely likely that we go through and potentially come back in and challenge some of these highs that we saw back in 2021. Now, overall, I think that, it's going to be important to go through and continue to monitor this, being that, we're essentially waiting to see if it can take out some of the highs that it established. Big time as well. This is one that I think is setting up very nicely, essentially breaking out of this very, very aggressive downtrend that it had been in. I think Big Time was down at one point in time close to 90% from the highs. if I'm remembering correctly. So Big Time is one that I do think doesn't just take out the highs that it's currently established for this cycle. I do think that it goes beyond, and I think that anywhere from $2 to $10 for Big Time would make a lot of sense, given just kind of where it is. But I think outside of that, yeah, maybe I'll touch on Pepe just really quick, and then we'll wrap up with that. Getting close to the 26-minute mark, I think, for this video. So, yeah, so Pepe. Um, Pepe as well, I think will go through and continue to just do absolutely tremendous. My overall expectation here. Oh, you know what? I gotta. This would be where for Pepe. Here we go, and then we'll swap over to the daily time frame. So, yes, that was the note that I had made for taking profits. Man, I was trying to make this one quick, and here I am cleaning up the drawing as we go. So Pepe, obviously the last time it had gone through and seen a very significant peak was at the red band on the daily time frame, and it went through and began to go through and consolidate from there. After that, it went through, took out those highs, deviated the yellow band. So far, we are at the yellow band. So I do think Pepe has a very strong likelihood of probably going through and tagging the orange band and the red band again. So from there, that's essentially a 2 to a 3x move. Now, obviously, if this goes through and kind of grinds up slower, then at that point in time, I think that this being, moving, this is dynamic, that at that point in time, maybe Pepe sees, potentially a 5 to a 10x in it, but that would be a lot, especially, given the overall size of the market cap for Pepe. Not saying that it can't do that. It's just that's a lot of money flowing into a meme. Not that Pepe couldn't do it. It is a popular meme. But anyhow, that would be kind of my overall expectation. I'd keep an eye on the orange band wherever that is. If we can go through and confidently get back above the yellow band, and then if we can overcome that, I'd keep an eye on the red band. I don't necessarily think Pepe would come into contact with the purple band on the daily time frame for this cycle, but it could go through. I mean, it can. It can. Don't get me wrong. It can. It's just I don't think it's necessarily likely for this, especially given the overall market cap that Pepe finds itself at. So, all right, with that, we will go ahead and wrap up the video. So, yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Reach out to me, and we'll go from there. So, all right, cool.